DreAllDay.com.
You are now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques, all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called work on your game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is how to stand out. How can you start making yourself stand out and draw some attention in your space or whatever you're doing? I actually want to make this topic universal enough that it doesn't matter what you do, you can apply these principles. So before I get into that, first of all, let me inform everybody, I have a daily motivation text message that I send out free of charge to everyone who is in my text community. If you would like to receive that daily motivation text, all you have to do is text me. And my text message number is the same number I'll be texting you from. My number is 305-384-6894. So make sure you send me a text at that number so you're getting that daily motivation text. And got to make sure I'm throwing this in there. Everyone who is listening to the show, make sure you are subscribed to the show. Please subscribe to the show wherever you are listening to this. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to me on YouTube. If you are watching this on or listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you subscribe there as well, because knowing what the average podcast show does and looking at the rankings that they have on these apps, for some reason, well, actually I know the reason. Apple Podcasts, as of the date that I'm recording this, doesn't have Work on Your Game listed in the top 200 in the education category, which is ridiculous because we definitely do more listens per episode than many of the shows that are in that top 200. I already know that to be a fact. But they don't have it listed. And y'all know how they do the shadow banning and the throttling, it depending on based on what type of topics the show talks about. And I probably touched on some third reel things that they don't like. But if we get more people subscribed to the show, then maybe we can overcome their tactics anyway. So make sure you are subscribed to the show wherever platform you happen to be consuming the show on. With all that said, let's get into our topic here, which is how to stand out. This episode, I mean, the title is pretty self-explanatory. And again, any of you who wants to stand out in what you do, and you don't want to blend in, you don't want to just be another number, you don't want to just fade into the wallpaper, you want to make a name for yourself in what you do, and you want to leave an impression that is hard to forget, what I'm going to share with you here today, these principles can apply to you. Number one, topic once again is how to stand out. First thing you can do is same thing that Earl Nightingale explained in his Lead the Field audio tape way back in the, who knows when this was, probably in the 60s and the 70s, which is stop following the patterns of everybody else. Earl Nightingale said, you step into a new space and you don't know what to do, but you know you want to be, above average. You want to be ahead of most of the people there. All you gotta do is look around at what everybody else is doing and do the opposite. All right, simple as that. So look at the patterns that everyone else has already left for you and just don't do that. You can't stand out while attempting to blend in, folks. So you got to make a decision. Which one do you want to do? So how, where, when, and in what area are you willing to go against the grain and either do something, be something, or represent something that is different than what is normally accepted in that space and or by the people in that area? That's what will make you stand out. This sounds like a simple enough idea. The challenge for people is not the concept of standing out and doing something different than what everybody else is doing, because logically, once I just explained that, I mean, this sounds like a quote-unquote common sense idea to pretty much anyone. The challenge for many people, though, is the emotional baggage that comes with not doing what everybody else is doing. And all of you listening to this, you've been alive for the last 2-3+ years, and you can see the emotional baggage and the emotional challenge and what happens to people when they find themselves not doing what everybody else is doing, and how easily some people may fold and just do what everybody else is doing, because it's much easier to follow the crowd than it is to stand out. So standing out is not about you needing to be some kind of genius who has this great idea on how to stand out, because the concept of standing out is really simple. Look what everybody else is doing and do the opposite. The biggest challenge to standing out, folks, especially when you're stepping into a place where the norms and the habits and the normal modus operandi is already established, the biggest challenge is not how do you stand out. The biggest challenge is, do you have the courage to stand out? Do you have the balls to stand out? Do you have the internal, mental, intestinal, spiritual, emotional fortitude to stand out? Because you already know what to do and how to do it. Again, the people who are already there are giving you the blueprint for how to do it. The question is, are you willing to do it? And then once you start doing it, if you take the challenge, if you accept the challenge, it's the blowback and the backlash and the dirty looks and the whatever may come with the fact that you're not doing what everybody else is doing. All right, how long can you deal with that? Can you deal with it? And can you deal with it for long enough for people to just accept that you're not going to be pressured into doing what they're doing, to the point that you basically create a new way of operating because you're willing to stand out and be different from everybody else? That's really the question of this first point here, not following the patterns of other people. There are a lot of people who work in a space like entrepreneurship, for example, who they say that they want to stand out. They say they want to be different. They say they want to, bring something new to the game or whatever they're doing, or at least they intimate that that's what they want to do. But then when it comes time to actually do something different than what they see everybody else doing, they resist. They just want to copy what they see other people doing. They want to follow the similar patterns. They want to do things the exact same ways. The challenge with that here, folks, is that in the world that we're in now, and this is only going to become even more true as we move forward in life, is that if you're following the patterns that are already established, not only are you blending in with the people that you already know about, but you're also blending in with a whole bunch of people that you probably don't even know exist, simply because there's so many of them out there. The internet is so wide and it's so vast a space, and there's so many people jumping into it every day. What are you going to offer that simply cannot be replicated anywhere else? And usually that's going to be something that's based on you and your own lived experiences and your own insights. But are you willing to stand on that strongly enough that even if it's going against the grain of what everybody else is doing, and you're openly going against the grain and maybe get some backlash for going against the grain, are you willing to stand on it? So where are you willing to represent something that is different than what's normally expected? In any episode where I've talked about non-conformity, and I've talked about it from different angles, this sounds like it's such an easy thing to do, but again, as I said, much harder to do in practice. All right, most people are simply blending into the wallpaper. There's nothing wrong with blending in if that's what you want to do. If you want to blend in, fine, blend in. Just know that you do have to make a choice between blending in and standing out, and it is pretty much a binary choice. I mean, you got to understand that the average is the average for a reason, because most people do what the average person does. But if your goal is to stand out, your actions can't blend in. So you have to make a choice here. Point number 2. The topic once again is how to stand out. The second thing you can do to stand out is hack the system. A simple hack for standing out is to go to where standing out will be easy for you. So where is an easy place to stand out for you may be different than the place that's easy to stand out for me, because we're not the same person. We're not bringing the same ideas or the same principles or maybe the same assets to the table. So you have to take stock of what it is that you have to offer and ask yourself, where would this be vastly different than what's already being offered, while at the same time you don't want to be so different that people don't even know what they're getting. This is a classic marketing tactic that's easy to understand but not as easy to implement for many people. So you're basically going to take what you do and be somewhere that you're not expected to be. I'll give you an example that I heard someone give. There's this guy who's a jewelry salesperson, and he has a normal jewelry store that you see it in places that you would expect to see a jewelry store. Where do you expect to see a jewelry store? And the jewelry district, or the design district, or the diamond district in whatever city you happen to live in, you'll see a jewelry store in malls. He has stores in places like that. But this guy, he also places his jewelry store at horse auctions. This is places where people go and buy horses for thousands of dollars. Now, why would you put a jewelry store at a horse auction? The reason he puts a jewelry store at a horse auction is because he understands the psychology of the men who go to these horse auctions, is that they go to these auctions and they promise their significant others, I'm not going to buy a horse, I'm not going to buy a horse, but then they end up buying a horse. And the whole concept is, well, if you bring home your wife a diamond bracelet or a nice pair of earrings along with the horse, then maybe she won't get so mad about the fact that you brought the horse because you also bought the jewelry. So that's an example of going where standing out is easy, because there aren't any other jewelry store competitors at a horse auction. Another example is the George Foreman grill, which almost all of us have had one version of the George Foreman grill. That Foreman grill used to be sold at places you would expect to buy grills like that, at Target, at one of those stores in the mall that have all the as seen on TV type stuff. That's the place you expect to see is Foreman grill. And before it was called the Foreman grill, it was called whatever it was called. But then they slapped George Foreman's name on it, got him to do a whole bunch of Home Shopping Network, QVC, advertisements and infomercials for it, and they started selling it in a place where the grill was not competing with other grills. It was just competing with people's sense of urgency and getting them to buy the grill on TV, and that grill took off. And George Foreman is one of the top 5 paid athlete endorsers of all time because of his association with that grill. It was just the grill until George Foreman got his name slapped on it in a licensing deal, and it became the Foreman grill. And George Foreman is probably more known for that grill than he is for his boxing career. He was a champion boxer. Both of these stories show that you can take something that you have or do that would merely blend in one space. In one space, nobody would really notice it and probably wouldn't pay that much attention to it, simply because it's so similar to what else is already out there. And you can take it and put it in a different space, and immediately it stands out simply because there's no competition and thus nothing to compare it to. Just by doing that alone, without any increase in skill, you can create a huge opportunity for yourself in whatever it is you do. However, this requires a good amount of courage. You gotta have some balls here, because you're gonna be going against the grain. Most people, frankly, do not have the courage to go against the grain. This is why most people step into a space and they just follow what they see everybody else doing, not because they don't logically understand these concepts, because they don't emotionally grasp them strongly enough that they're willing to do anything with the knowledge. That they can acknowledge it, but they're not willing to do anything with it, because standing out and going against the grain is more emotionally challenging than it is tactically and executionally challenging. If executionally is even a word. If it's not, just create a new one. Moving on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is how to stand out in anything you do. Number 3, be outstanding. This is maybe the simplest idea for how to stand out, is to be an outstanding entity in what you do. So Serena Williams in tennis, Michael Jordan in basketball, Tiger Woods in golf, Steve Jobs in technology. These are all people who are outstanding at what they do, to the point that when you talk about their areas of expertise, their name usually comes up. They're a person that you think of simply because they have been so great at what they do, usually for a sustained period of time, that you can't bring up that area without bringing up their name, or somebody's going to bring up their name. They're all in a space in which there are many, many others doing a similar thing, but they stood out through their performance at a level that makes them singular, in a way that you have to remember them, you have to mention them. So when you see my episodes on greatness, you can understand how I break down their formulas. I'll give you a couple of those episodes. That was episode number 1833, where I taught the consistency of greatness. Episode 1103, which is the greatness equation. Episode 991, greatness is greedy. The question is, are you greedy? In episode 782, greatness is a decision. And we got several others. If you go to workonyourgamepodcast.com, you can see the full complement of every episode that's been published here, and you can search through, find an episode that suits you. Anything that you can't find in the regular feed here on whatever app you are listening to this on. But that's what it means to be outstanding. It's be at a level that you're just so great at what you do, even though you're doing something that is relatively common, because there's a whole bunch of other people doing it. You are so great at what you do that you stand out from everybody else just by simply being better, and being better for a more consistent period of time than everybody else. Now, there's a challenge to this, and I'll tell you about that in a second, because this formula is not a secret. Well, I just told you, being outstanding, but it's not easy to apply. It is available to everyone, and this is the way you can stand out, even if you stay in a space in which everybody expects to see you. But here's the challenge with using the being outstanding technique for standing out, is that you must make the decision to lift your preparation, your performance, and your production of results to a level that is above everyone else in that space, and even above what others would expect of you. All right, this is, again, easy to understand, hard to execute. The challenge with this approach is that not everyone can do it, because only one person can be the best. So when we talk about golf, most people think of Tiger Woods. When I say tennis, at least women's tennis, most people will think of Serena Williams. When I say basketball, maybe some of you might think LeBron James. You might think of Kobe Bryant. You might think of Michael Jordan. The thing they all have in common is they all were the person during their particular era, or at least one of maybe a handful of people during their particular era. So if you think about how many other people were in the space at the same time that these people, how many other women played tennis, how many other basketball players were playing basketball, how many other golfers played golf in this time period. I mentioned Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. How many other people, or Jeff Bezos, how many other people were in the space at that exact same time starting businesses that did well? But only one can stand out above everybody else. And even if you put a few people next to each other, parallel to each other, there's only going to be a handful of them amongst thousands who are all doing that exact same thing. So yes, you can stand out by simply being more outstanding than everybody else. The question is, are you willing to make that kind of sacrifice? Are you willing to make that kind of investment in order to make yourself stand out? And here's the other challenge with that. You can put all that time in, and there's no guarantee that you're actually going to get the payoff. But we got to put this in here, because this is a way that you can make yourself stand out. So the challenge is, not everybody can do it. Only one can be the best, and only a few could even be in a conversation, but somebody has to be that one. So the question is, are you willing to take that bet and take that risk that you might be that person? But you have to go all in on it in order to achieve this one. This is not one, as opposed to the other 2 points here, the being outstanding approach is one that you can't go halfway on. You can't do this part-time. This is not something you can gonna be tested out for 6 weeks and see how it goes, and then I'll decide if I want to go all in. It's either you're all in or you're out. It's 1% of doubt and you're out when it comes to this one right here. So I just want to make sure you understand that. And if you think of these people who I mentioned, you read their stories, all of them have books and documentaries written by them and about them, about their lives. All of them made the same decision from a very early point, is that I'm going all in on this thing. And it was not, well, let me see how it goes. It was, I'm going all in on this thing, and it ended up working out. While at the same time, there are a bunch of other people who are around that same period as them, that they made that decision. They also made a decision. Other people who you don't know about, who made a decision that they were going to go all in on that same thing. They didn't blow up. They didn't become outstanding. They didn't become one of the people, the handful of people that get mentioned in that area, and we don't get to know their stories. And for every one Tiger or Serena or Jordan, excuse me, there are 100 or 1,000 more who tried to get to that position who did not achieve it. So understand that just because the ones you know about are the ones who made it, there are a whole bunch that you don't know about who didn't make it. So do not be fooled by the lack of example of people who didn't make it to think that everybody who tried it did. That is not true. So let's recap today's class, which is how to stand out. It's pretty much a self-explanatory title. So if you want to be a person who leaves an impression and it's hard to forget, here are the 3 ways you can do it. Number 1, stop following the patterns of others. You can't stand out while attempting to blend in. So the question is, how, where, when, and in what area are you willing to go against the grain and represent something that is different than what is normally accepted? This is a simple enough idea. The challenge is the emotional baggage and the emotional stress, if you will, that comes with being the person who is standing out, because some people are not going to be happy with the fact that you're not following the same patterns that they follow. This is just how human beings are. Point number 2, hack the system by going somewhere where standing out is easy because you don't have competition. The Foreman grill was just a grill. So they put George Foreman's name on it, and they put it on a home shopping network where there was no competition with other grills. All of a sudden, this became a hot commodity product, and they sold millions of grills simply because there was no competition. So that was a way of standing out, just moving to a different space. This requires a good amount of courage also, because you're still going against the grain and going somewhere where people might not even know why you're there. And if you're not comfortable with the fact that you're somewhere where you're not, quote unquote, supposed to be, you might not show up the way that you need to. And point number 3, simply be outstanding. Serena Williams, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods. These are all people who are so great at what they did that when you mention the thing that they did, usually their name comes up. And you mention them, you think of the thing that they did, because they were so outstanding in it that they became synonymous with whatever their work happened to be. You can do this as well, but understand that not everybody can be the best. Only a handful of people could even be in the conversation. So if you go after this one, you got to be all in on it from the very beginning. You cannot dip your toes in this. You cannot test the waters. You're in or you're out. So now you got your choices. All that said, a couple things. First of all, text me to get my daily motivation at my number 305-384-6894. Second, make sure you are subscribed to and leaving a rating of the show wherever you are listening to the show. And number 3, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com, where you have the option of a few things. First of all, you can work with me one-on-one in my 3rd-day mastermind. There's a link at the top of the page to schedule a call. There's my Bulletproof Mastermind. It's my group training program where I do a live call every week. And you get access to all of my courses. That is my Work on Your Game System Manual, Bulletproof Mindset course, 30 Days of Discipline course, and all my other courses. They're all listed right there on that page. That's all at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all day.